fullback position is one of the most important in modern-day football. Today we have names such as Trent Alexander-Arnold, João Cancelo and Alphonso Davies, who are undoubtedly among the best, but they are all very, very different. However, all three of them are examples of fullbacks filling a role that would have never existed if not for one extremely skillful and talented Brazilian who revolutionized it. His name is Roberto Carlos, and he only scored bangers.
Roberto Carlos looking for the bend! Boom, boom, Roberto!
Who is your favourite fullback of all time? Let us know in the comments section. It would be great to compare them and have a little discussion, but you must understand that every great modern fullback is what he is because of Roberto Carlos. But why is that? Was Carlos really that influential in his position? Let's find out. Born in Garça, Brazil in 1973, Carlos began his football journey like many aspiring Brazilian talents, from a small local team. In Carlos's case, it was a club called União São João, based in the city of Sao Paulo. In 1992, at the age of 19, he was surprisingly called up to the Brazilian national team. The development for him in that period of his career was moving very quickly, which is seemingly more typical of today's young talents rather than those 35 years ago. In the span of the next 3 seasons, he played for 2 of the most successful Brazilian clubs, Atlético Mineiro and Palmeiras. His incredible talent as well as his desire and eagerness for the big football did not go unnoticed. And in 1995, Roberto Carlos switched to Inter Milan to become part of Roy Hodgson's team. He showed his incredible display on his debut, scoring an amazing 30-yard free kick against Vicenza. From today's perspective, we could definitely say that this one was for the ages, considering what he went on to do subsequently. He made a total of 30 Serie A appearances that season, scoring 5 goals. Things were going quite well in the club, until Hodgson began to insist on playing him as a winger instead of a left-back. Of course, we all know what Carlos's preferred position is, and it was reported years later that he had complained to owner Massimo Moratti, asking him if he could sort things out. Well, by the end of the 1995-96 season, the relationship between Hodgson and Carlos had not improved, leaving the Brazilian free to seek a move elsewhere. And when Real Madrid coach Fabio Capello heard that Carlos was for sale, he immediately demanded its transfer from the then president Lorenzo Sanz. Interestingly, the move was completed in less than 24 hours, with Carlos's overwhelming desire to be part of Real Madrid, as well as the scandal between him and Roy Hodgson, facilitating the deal. It is important to note, however, that this was not a good period for Real Madrid. For the 10 years prior, arch-rivals Barcelona had been reaping the fruits of their dream team, led by Johan Cruyff. Real Madrid's only La Liga title of the 1990s came in 1995, while their last Champions League trophy in 1966 was a distant memory. However, there is another aspect that is not talked about enough. As we mentioned in our last video, it is widely known that the first player in Real Madrid's so-called Galáctico team is Luis Figo. He was the first transfer made by new president Florentino Perez. However, it is fair to say that the first Galáctico is in fact Roberto Carlos, who has undoubtedly proved that he belongs in this category with his many years of service to Real Madrid. Arriving in 1996, Carlos wasted no time in making his mark on the team. As a left-back in a new league with a completely different philosophy and style of play, he did some extraordinary things on the pitch. In just his first season at the Santiago Bernabeu, Carlos scored 5 goals and provided 13 assists in all competitions. The impact he had on the Real Madrid attack was unparalleled. Nearly 20 goal contributions from a defensive player in his first campaign at one of the biggest clubs in the world was a truly impressive feat. But perhaps the more important question was he really a defensive player? Because they were definitely not the numbers of a defensive-minded fullback. 18 goal involvements in his first season, 22 in his second, 18 in his third, 16 in his fourth, 23 in his fifth. He kept getting better and better and better. However, with some of today's attacking fullbacks failing to perform in defense, you'd probably think that Carlos was also struggling. Think again. The Brazilian was performing brilliantly as a defender as well. He had the perfect positioning and concentration to mark the attacker, as well as the physical capacity to constantly run down the left flank and help both defense and attack. He is definitely the quintessential example of such a player, truly a pleasure to watch. Even his former coach Vicente Del Bosque stated that in his past, Roberto Carlos can cover the entire left wing all on his own. In fact, Carlos recently starred in a Champions League video explaining what it takes to be the perfect defensive fullback. My advice for a defender is to really study the player you're going to mark. Concentrate on the ball, always look into the eyes of the player that has the ball. Position yourself well to know which direction the player will go, inside or outside. Win all the battles against your opponent and you will be the man of the match. Interestingly, Roberto Carlos didn't say a single word about his attacking contribution in the video because his numbers speak for themselves. Further proof that he was sensational in both attack and defense. And speaking of his offensive impact, we're not talking about any goals and assists. Roberto Carlos's great moments have been remembered over the years, but there are two that will never be forgotten. After all, who could forget the iconic free kick against France in 1997? From an impossible angle, Carlos unleashed a terrific shot that seemed to defy science, curling the ball in such a way that even the opposing goalkeeper was left rooted to the spot. Another iconic moment, but this time as an assistant, was his incredible pass for Zinedine Zidane in the 2002 Champions League final against Bayer Leverkusen. The French talisman scored one of the greatest volleys in history, but it would have been nothing without the assist from Roberto Carlos. Overall, the Brazilian has gone down as perhaps the greatest left-back in Real Madrid history. With 584 appearances in all competitions, he is one of the 10 most capped foreign players in the club's history. He scored 71 goals and assisted 116, making a total of 187 involvements. According to various pundits and experts, Carlos has been described as the most offensive-minded fullback in the history of the game, and the greatest left-back in the world, alongside Paolo Maldini, which, to be honest, isn't very realistic, as Maldini only played half of his career as a fullback, switching to centre-half in the later years of his career. Besides that, however, Carlos was undoubtedly the one who revolutionized the fullback position forever. But how did he manage to do it? Well, to answer this very question, we have to go back 40 years in time. Picture this: in the 80s and early 90s, football was a strictly positioned game. Each of the 11 players on the pitch had one main task, and overall, there was almost no freedom to roam between the lines as in modern football. In fact, the game was so strictly organized that most teams used no jersey numbers other than 1, 2, 3 and up to 11. One of the supposed reasons for this is that it made it easier for coaches to tactically visualize how players should be deployed on the pitch. For example, if you're a number 2, like another Brazilian icon Cafu, you are a right back, and your primary role on the pitch is to defend the right flank from the opposition's attacks. Or if you're a number 11, you're most likely a winger, and your task is to go one-on-one with defenders and create goal-scoring opportunities. So yes, in the past, teams relied mainly on defense, and free roams were something very rare, especially for fullbacks. And here comes the revolutionary role of Roberto Carlos. He arrived in Europe as an extremely offensive-minded player who, however, insisted on playing at fullback at all costs. He had the skill set of one of the best attacking footballers, such as other legendary compatriots in the past like Zico, Garrincha, or Socrates, for example. Dribbling, speed, flair. He had the typical Brazilian samba in his repertoire, but there was no way for him to play in any other position other than his favourite. And in the end, his choice proved to be the right one, as he went on to become the greatest left-back of all time. After him, more and more fullbacks followed his example, and his legacy was passed on from generation to generation. Interestingly, in 2007, the year he left Madrid, another Brazilian magician arrived at the club. Yes, Marcelo. Yes, Marcelo also went down in history, but the difference between the two was that he couldn't match Carlos's defensive solidity, although he was incredibly effective and spectacular in attack with his trademark Joga Bonito. Yes, in modern times, other amazing players have appeared on the footballing map. Dani Alves and Jordi Alba at Barcelona, Andrew Robertson and Trent at Liverpool, Ashley Cole and Reece James at Chelsea, Philipp Lahm and Alphonso Davies at Bayern Munich, Javier Zanetti at Inter Milan, João Cancelo at Man City, and the list goes on and on. There are dozens of names that could be mentioned. There are even more variations on the positions, such as the inverted fullback. But none of this would have been possible without the historic role of Roberto Carlos, the defender who only scored bangers and changed the fullback position forever. And now, what do you think, guys? Can you think of any more iconic fullbacks other than Roberto Carlos? And most importantly, which of the current best players in that position do you think has the potential to top the Brazilian by the end of their careers? Comment down below. Also, if you enjoyed it and want more similar videos, please drop a like, hit the subscribe button and check out some of our latest uploads here. And again, as always, take care and see you on the pitch.